Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing something absolutely crucial. We're taking the clinical science of neuroplasticity and translating it into a highly actionable everyday recovery guide for brain injury survivors. If you or a loved one are navigating life after a stroke or a traumatic brain injury, the medical jargon can feel completely overwhelming. But that's exactly why we're here. We're going to break it all down and show you exactly how you can take an active role in your own healing. So, did you know your brain actually has a hidden superpower? It can literally heal itself after an injury? It's true. For a really long time, there was this huge misconception that once the brain was damaged, well, that was it. End of story. But science actually tells us the exact opposite. Recovery is a dynamic, active process, and you are entirely in the driver's seat here. You've got this incredible hidden superpower that allows your brain to physically rewire itself. Meet your changing, adaptive brain. This right here is neuroplasticity in action. It's basically the brain's incredible ability to form brand new neural connections, relearn lost skills, and creatively compensate for injury. And honestly, here is the best news right out of the gate. One of the absolute core principles of neuroplasticity is that your age just doesn't matter. Sure, kids pick up skills like sponges, but this adaptive superpower works no matter how old you are. You absolutely have the potential to learn and relearn skills right now. Okay, so here's our quick roadmap for today's explainer. 1. Meet your changing brain. 2. Foundation. Use it, target it. 3. The engine. Repetition and intensity. 4. The fuel. Making it meaningful. And finally, 5. Balancing your recovery goals. Let's jump right into Section 1. Meet your changing brain. The basics of healing. So what exactly is neuroplasticity? Simply put, it's the nervous system's ability to reorganize its structure, functions, or connections after an injury like a stroke or a TBI. Think about a toddler learning to walk for the first time. Their motivation comes from, say, wanting to reach a parent across the room, right? They practice, they stumble, they try again, and slowly but surely their brain builds up those pathways. Well, relearning to walk after a stroke works the exact same way. It requires really focusing on movements that used to be completely automatic, like just bending a knee. To build those new neural pathways, the brain follows a fundamental principle called use it and improve it. Basically, the more you practice a skill, the more you fire those specific brain connections, which strengthens them over time. Moving on to Section 2, Foundation. Use it, target it. There is a really fascinating contrast between two fundamental principles of your recovery. On the one hand, we've got use it or lose it. Your brain is essentially a giant network, and if you stop using certain connections, they're going to fade and weaken over time. Simply put, if you don't drive certain brain functions, you might lose them entirely. But here's the catch. Just keeping the brain generally active isn't enough. That brings us to the other hand, specificity. This means the nature of your training strictly dictates the nature of your healing. You can't just do any random exercise. You literally have to target the exact neurons responsible for the specific action you want back. In practice, specificity reveals a very simple truth. You must practice walking to get better at walking. Look, doing general leg lifts or seated stretches is great for basic movement, sure. But if your ultimate goal is to actually walk across the room, you need to practice the specific mechanics of walking. Your evidence-based exercises have to target the precise area of the brain you are actively trying to reorganize. All right, Section 3, the engine, repetition, and intensity. I really want this number to sink in. 31,500. Studies show that inducing true neuroplastic changes, like actual cortical reorganization in your brain, requires hundreds, if not thousands of repetitions. If you want to relearn how to comfortably lift your morning coffee cup, lifting it 5 times a day just isn't going to trigger that change. In fact, one study found it took about 31,500 repetitions over 35 days to produce functional changes. Now, contrast that with this rather staggering fact. Research shows that the average stroke patient in an acute hospital or rehab facility takes only about 185 steps per session. Think about that. 185 steps versus the thousands actually needed. This massive gap is exactly why you cannot rely solely on your clinic visits. The real engine of neuroplasticity runs on the homework you put in every single day. So how do we close that gap? Well, here is your actionable daily schedule, which perfectly combines those principles of repetition and intensity. First up, schedule frequent sessions. Think of the brain kind of like a muscle at the gym. If you only lift weights once a month, you're obviously not going to see improvement. You need consistent frequency. Second, maximize those repetitions. You've got to aim for hundreds of reps and thousands of steps to really drive that specific brain function. And third, increase the intensity. Intensity goes hand in hand with repetition. If you go to the gym and lift tiny weights that don't challenge you at all, you won't grow. You absolutely need to push your limits. Play around with it. Adjust how many times you do an exercise, how long you do it, or how difficult it is to ensure you are genuinely challenging your brain to adapt.
Which brings us to section 4, the fuel, making it meaningful. This quote really hits the nail on the head. Motivation helps facilitate neuroplastic changes. Research shows that being motivated physically changes your brain. In clinical terms, we call this the principle of salience, which is honestly just a fancy way of saying your exercises must actually mean something to you. Your brain has a literal salience network that helps it perceive and respond to demands. When a task is deeply personal and vital to your independence, like relearning to feed yourself or play a board game with your kids, your brain literally pays closer attention. And that enhanced focus boosts the effectiveness of every single other principle we've talked about today.
So how do we actually apply this? Let's look at some simple, real-world ways to add salience to your routine. Instead of just sitting there doing standard, boring, hand-to-mouth repetitive exercises, why not prepare a delicious, incredibly appealing meal that you absolutely love? The pure desire to eat that specific food provides salient stimuli. Better yet, share that meal with a friend. The social pressure and desire to self-feed correctly in front of someone else will dramatically boost your focus. Or say you need to practice standing balance. Don't just stand in a sterile room staring at a wall. Practice your balance so you can master your golf stance for your favorite hobby. Transforming dull clinical exercises into exciting personal goals is the absolute secret fuel for much faster recovery.
Finally, let's look at section 5, balancing your recovery goals. You're definitely going to experience two fascinating neuroplastic principles during your recovery journey: transference and interference. Transference is the good stuff. It basically means that improving a skill in one area transfers over to help another. For example, research actually shows that specific locomotor training, practicing walking, doesn't just improve your walking, it wonderfully improves your balance and overall strength too. The skills generalize, which is awesome. But you also need to keep an eye out for interference. Sometimes plasticity in response to one experience can temporarily interfere with learning another. Like if you're intensely focused on learning one specific new physical skill, you might find another area temporarily stalls out. Don't panic, this is completely normal, and your clinical therapist knows exactly how to work around it.
And that leads us nicely to the principle of time. Progress rates will absolutely fluctuate over time. And again, this is normal neuroplastic healing. You're going to have weeks where your rate of improvement feels incredibly fast, like you're on fire. And then there will be frustrating plateaus where progress seems to slow to a total crawl. Please remember that both the fast sprints and the slow crawls are completely natural parts of your brain's restructuring process. Starting therapy early is absolutely crucial, but recognizing that progress continues with time is what will ultimately keep you going.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? From the brain's incredible superpower of neuroplasticity to the absolute need for specificity, repetition, intensity, and salience. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative question to chew on today. What is the one meaningful goal that will drive your thousands of steps? Seriously, find that salient, deeply personal goal. Let it motivate your daily engine, push your intensity, and help you take active control of your recovery journey starting right now. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember, keep putting in those reps.